So, you've seen the film The Conjuring 2, and it remains to be one of my favourite horror films to this day, probably due to it being set in England, and I can relate to a lot of the environment and the way the characters talk to each other, and I feel like I've been in plenty of those houses, and yeah, just like that. And it could have easily been any of my grandparents' houses. Also, it's just a pretty scary film. Really well done with some good scares. Now, usually films like this that have a message at the start usually reads based on true events. I normally take this with a pinch of salt, but I was astounded to find out that a lot of what happened in the film did supposedly happen. From furniture and toys being moved and being witnessed by the police, and to the supposed possession of Janet Hodgson by the bitter and old Bill Wilkins, who just refused to leave his house after his death. In this episode, we'll delve deep into the famous Enfield Poltergeist case and hopefully come to a conclusion as to whether this was a true case of the paranormal or nothing more than one of the most elaborate hoaxes in paranormal history. Now, welcome back, Spook Crew. If it's your first time here, welcome to Spooky on the Radio, where each week we delve deep into the shadows where spirits roam, UFOs lurk, and mysteries are just waiting to be uncovered. If you're brave enough, join me. Keep those lights dim, because what we're about to explore might just haunt you. Let's get into it. Now, the Enfield haunting took place in an area called Enfield, obviously. Enfield is a borough in North London and is located about 10 miles north of central London, and it's about 10 miles away from me, so I could go see this house. Maybe I should. Maybe I will. Don't dare me in the comments, because I will. Enfield, is part of Greater London region and has a mix of suburban neighbourhoods, green spaces and historical sites. Now, the town of Enfield itself, within the borough, is the main urban area. The borough borders Hertfordshire to the north and other London boroughs including Barnet, Haringey and the Waltham Forest. The Enfield haunting itself took place in a council estate at 284 Green Street in Brimstow, a neighbourhood within the borough of Enfield. And for a year and a half, the haunting turned the family's lives upside down. The Enfield poltergeist story began in 1977 and centred on the Hodgson family, mainly on the youngest daughter Janet. Now, the family tree consisted of single mother Peggy, daughters Margaret 13 and Janet 11, and sons Johnny and Billy aged 7. Now, we usually hear tales of ghostly encounters in grander settings, hotels, castles, ancient buildings, so the haunted house in Enfield resonated with families across Britain because, to them, it was real. It was so close to home, it felt, like I said in the intro, like it could happen to us. And in a future video, I will tell you about what happened to me in a very similar environment, my family home as a teenager. But yeah, enough of that's something to look forward to. The first occurrence, or suppose part of the haunting, happened in 1977 when Janet's mother, Peggy, heard lots and lots of bangs and noises coming from the girl's bedroom in the middle of the night. When she went to tell her daughters to settle down and go to sleep, instead of roughhousing, she found them huddled in the corner with terrified expressions on their faces. Now, speaking in a recent interview about 10 years ago, Janet said she remembered that night and that the chest of drawers had been moved across the room by a ghost.
Have you two been playing with this? Taking turns scaring the wits out of each other? No wonder I can't get a good night's sleep. No, I don't want to hear another word. Now get back to bed, the lot of
you! She said her mother was always dismissive and even a little angry, especially at the start. However, Peggy Hodgson then witnessed the drawers moving towards the door by a seemingly invisible force, almost as if some sort of paranormal presence was trying to trap the girls in the room. Now, when she tried to push back against the dresser, it wouldn't budge. Classic, about anything these days. Now, according to the family, that was just the beginning of what would become their nearly 18-month haunting. Now, One of the many reasons that the haunted house in Enfield became such a worldwide sensation was because many of the paranormal events that took place inside the home were captured on film. So I will try and play some of these as we're going through, and obviously if it's relevant to what I'm saying, like some tape recordings which are chilling. They get me every single time, and some pictures which I don't 100% think happened, but who knows. But yeah, I'll try and sort of play them as I go through it, and if they're relevant. But there is some really spooky stuff. Yeah, all captured on film. Now, once the police were called, many more events began to occur. Items were regularly thrown around. Janet, the youngest daughter, spoke in strange voices and snarls, and she was thrown around her bedroom. One image shows her mid-air, seemingly in an impossible leap. Now, after the Hodgsons reached out to the local paper to try and get some help, they sent a man to investigate who was pivotal to the case, and that man's name was Maurice Grosse. A personal tragedy launched Grosse into psychical research. Now, when his daughter Janet was killed in a motorbike accident in August 1976, following her death, Grosse reported that members of his family experienced a number of coincidences and psychic happenings, and that's what led him to join the Society of Psychical Research, which is a non-profit UK organisation whose stated purpose is to understand events and abilities commonly described as psychic or paranormal. Now, there was a really great documentary about 10 years ago called Interview with a Poltergeist. It is on YouTube, so again, I will have that link in the description below, so you can go and watch it. It's really, really good. Really, really good. Maurice Grosse and Guy Playfair were two of the investigators in the Society of Psychical Research, and they maintained that they believed the haunting was genuine and caught many of the now infamous images on film. Now, another almost cliche of modern ghost haunting is that equipment doesn't work as it should and becomes drained quickly, and this was also the case with the Enfield haunting. Most of the equipment used in their investigation was often found to be malfunctioning upon entering the Hodgson household, and despite working perfectly well beforehand. Now, however, Janet was found to have hidden a tape recorder and was videotaped bending spoons on another occasion, so you have to take the good with the bad. Was this girl faking it? You know, some of the stuff is pretty crazy, which I'll play in a bit, but then she's captured bending spoons, so it's like, take the good with the bad, you know? The investigators even captured some really chilling audio of Janet, and yeah, this is what I'll play, speaking in an old man's voice, which if you haven't heard these, like I say, they are really chilling. And yeah, I'll link it in the description so you can go and watch it yourself, but here's a little clip.
I want you to tell me whether you remember what happened to you when you died. Just before you died and just after you died.
Days before I died, I went blind. Then I had an hemorrhage, and I fell asleep, and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs.
I know what you're thinking, fucking scary, right? And that is supposed to be a 13-year-old girl, 12, 13-year-old girl. And okay, she could be putting on a voice, but it's pretty crazy. I think that's one of the best pieces of evidence in the story. And yeah, I've listened to it so many times, and to me, it's pretty convincing. Now, I've heard of what supposedly happened, but who was the spirit who Janet was supposedly possessed by? And this is really chilling and really quite similar to the film. So Janet would often go into a trance-like state where she would speak in a deep, scratchy voice, claiming to be the ghost of a man named Bill Wilkins, who had died in the house years before, and it was later proven that a man by that name was once a resident of the home and did die of a hemorrhage while sitting in the living room, and I just got shivers all over my spine. Janet claimed that the ghost would talk through her for hours at a time. Although the authenticity of the haunting was pulled into question through the years, one aspect of the case that always stumps skeptics is, yes, she could be put on a voice like I previously said, and pretending to be this Bill Wilkins. However, how did she know his name? The fact that he lived there, and most unexplainable of how did she know how he died in that chair in the living room? That's not like something a teenage girl is gonna know. And as you could hear, the voice is pretty, it's the word I'm looking for, it's pretty incredible. Now, some afterthoughts and theories on the haunting, and whether it was a hoax or not. Now, Janet and Margaret had both been seen faking evidence, such as when Janet was caught in a video on a video camera bending the spoons, like I previously said, and attempted to bend the iron. I don't know how you do that, but according to one of the members of the Society of Psychical Research, he apparently caught Janet banging a broom handle on the ceiling and hiding his camera. Now, both of the girls also accepted faking many paranormal activities because they wanted to prank them, apparently. Now, the SPR, after viewing all the tapes and recordings, came to the conclusion that the change of a voice done by Janet wasn't a possession. It was sort of like ventriloquism skills. An American stage magician by the name of Milbourne Christopher briefly investigated the Enfield occurrences and failed to observe anything that could be called paranormal. He was dismayed by what he felt was suspicious activity on the part of Janet, later concluding that the poltergeist, and I quote, I should say, the poltergeist was nothing more than the antics of a little girl who wanted to cause trouble and who was very, very clever. Close quote. It's quite scathing, really. I mean, another ventriloquist, Ray Allen, also visited the house and concluded that Janet's male voices were simply vocal tricks. This was alluded to in the film too, however, it is much more Hollywood in the film that they faked evidence and tried to get the Warrens away from the home. Now, speaking of the big word W, the big W in the room, the Warrens, it is true that Ed and Lorraine Warren did visit the house. However, it was nothing like it was in the film. They turned up as a surprise and had not been invited, and only stayed for a couple of days. They did investigate, and they concluded that it was an authentic haunting. Ed was on record saying, and quote, again, "Now, you couldn't record the dangerous, threatening atmosphere inside that little house, but you could film the levitations, teleportations, and dematerializations of people and objects that were happening there." He also continued to say that, not to mention the many hundreds of hours of tape recordings made out of these spirits' voices speaking out loud in the rooms, end quote. Now, again, Ed and Lorraine Warren, I love the Conjuring films, especially the second one, obviously, that's why we're doing this episode. We'll have to do an episode on Ed and Lorraine Warren. I don't know how I feel about them yet. I know a lot of people in the paranormal world just think they're full of shit. But I don't know enough about them yet, and we'll do like a big deep dive episode into them. And we'll sort of come to our own conclusions. What do you think about the Warrens? Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, he seemed to certainly think, and obviously she did, that this was a true haunting. Now, events like these are sure to leave a lasting impact on those affected. So what happened to the family after the haunting subsided? And this is real life now, obviously not the film. What happened to them? Janet believes that it was a priest's visit in 1978 to the family's Enfield home in North London that caused the hauntings to calm down, not the Warrens. Though the occurrences did not end completely, when the Enfield poltergeist event subsided and the press attention faded, the family faced various challenges. Janet married young after leaving home at 16. Her younger brother Johnny died of cancer at age 14. The family's claim of something paranormal being present in the house lasted all the way up until Peggy's death, at which time Janet's brother Billy moved out of the home. So all these things happened, and like the mum and the son still lived in that house. It's crazy. Could you live somewhere where all that had happened? I don't know if I could. Now, Speaking to the press in recent years, Billy stated that for years when he and his mother were living in the house, you could still hear knocks and bangs from within the house and the walls, and he remarked like you always felt like you were being watched. And this is crazy. I could not live somewhere like that. Maybe I'm just built, they're just built differently, I don't know. But after the real Peggy Hodgson passed away, Claire Bennett and her 4 sons moved into the Enfield home, and like Janet's younger brother Billy, Claire claimed that she always felt as if someone was watching her. During the night, her children would get woken up by voices coming from downstairs. She then learned about the Enfield poltergeist and had supposedly the haunting of the home. The final straw came when her son Shaka, 15, woke up and saw a man enter his room. They moved out the next day after being in the house for only 2 months. So, what do you think? Is this a real haunting or a hoax? And does the fact that another family has been forced to leave the home prove that the spirit of Bill Wilkins, I always have to say his name like that because it's just how he sounds in the film, is he still causing havoc in a place that he once called home, unrelenting in his efforts after death to have the place as he had it in life, with him sitting alone in his armchair, forcing out anyone who dare attempt to call 284 Green Street home. So, another creepy one for you guys today, right? Tell me in the comments, what do you think of the haunting? Was it true contact with a poltergeist? Or was it the work of 2 teenage girls reaching out for attention in all the wrong ways? However, for another week, that's a wrap, Spook Crew. Thanks for joining me on this journey beyond the ordinary and into the unknown. I hope you enjoyed the chilling here, listening to the stories as much as I loved researching it, because I really fucking loved researching this one. So thanks for tuning in to Spooky Island Radio, where the whispers of the unknown never fade. And remember, every like, share and subscribe brings us closer to the truth, one eerie step at a time. Until next time, stay curious, stay spooky, and remember, the island is always listening.